Hello everyone, my name is Vladislav Tankov, I'm a software engineer and researcher at JetBrains. And today I would like to present our work titled Infrastructure in Code towards developer-friendly cloud applications. We will talk about cloud computing and one of the biggest challenges in this area, the way the developer explains to the cloud what exactly they want. Amazon Web Services define cloud computing as the on-demand delivery of IT resources over the internet with pay-as-you-go pricing. Basically, this means that you can get a certain IT resource when you actually need it and only for the time you need it. There exists an advanced version of cloud computing called serverless computing. Unlike cloud computing, serverless computing defines specifically that the calculation should be composed of stateless functions that will be executed. Let's talk about the way resources in cloud computing are being created. There exists a pretty standard answer for the question how to talk to the cloud. You can simply use infrastructure as code. Infrastructure as code is a process of managing and provisioning computers and data centers through machine-readable definition files. Basically, this means that you write a pretty long definition file that explains what specific infrastructure you need to run your project. Right now, infrastructure as code is the de facto standard for the deployments. There are two key points that make it so popular. First, the definition files are the key to the reproducibility of the infrastructure. In modern companies, cloud infrastructure is really complex and contains thousands of services. It's very important to be able to recreate it from scratch or to duplicate some specific part of the infrastructure to support the needs of developing projects. All of this is possible in just several clicks with definition files. Secondly, infrastructure as code makes it possible to use standard software engineering techniques with infrastructure. You can save definitions in a version control system, create branches for experimental versions of the infrastructure, and so on. At the same time, infrastructure as code has its own drawbacks. With it, you have to write tons of configuration files for very simple tasks. And, what is worse, you have to duplicate the knowledge that is already expressed in your code in infrastructure definitions. As an example, let's take this pretty simple snippet. Here we have a get annotation that defines the get method handler on path hello world that returns a predefined string value. Easy. And that is what it would do if we would run this application locally with Spring. But what if we would like to deploy such an application? We would need either to create a calculation instance, or if we would choose to go fully cloud native, we would have to create a very complex serverless definition and connect it with some HTTP facade. In all cases, it would take a lot of configuration just to deploy it. Can we make it simpler? We propose the infrastructure in code approach. We define it as a way of managing and provisioning infrastructure through the automatic inference of infrastructural requirements from the application code. This means that the infrastructure in code instruments should use the information from the application code and understand what the user wants instead of making them explicitly repeat what is going on in configuration files. So, you are curious how would it work? We propose to split each infrastructure in code instrument in two parts: Development API and Cloud API. Development API helps the developer to express what specifically they want, meaning some specific infrastructural requirements. Development API can be implemented in various forms. It could be annotations, function-based domain-specific language, DSL, or even an XML file. What is more important, it can even be an existing DSL of an existing framework. For example, we can interpret Spring annotations as infrastructure requirements. Cloud API is a set of specific cloud services which implement specific infrastructure requirements. For example, for functions it can be AWS Lambda. Cloud API works with infrastructure requirements and does not bother with the specifics of Development API. This way, the two parts of the pipeline do not depend on each other. Let's show how it can work with an example. Here is the same snippet we have already seen. The Development API here expresses two main infrastructure requirements. We need to have some HTTP facade to implement the get method handler, and we need to be able to connect it with stateless calculation. How can we implement it? Well, obviously we can use Amazon Web Services and just create an API gateway to provide the HTTP facade and connect it with a specific AWS Lambda. But as we said, there is no limitations on Cloud API from Development API. So we can use Microsoft Azure to implement the same thing. Basically, we just take the same infrastructure requirements and implement them in another form. This means that the same code can be deployed to two cloud providers at once, depending on the needs of the specific user. While there are already some tools on the market that we classify as infrastructure in code, we also develop our own implementation of that paradigm in JetBrains research. It's called Kotless, a serverless framework for Kotlin. Our own implementation is fully industry-driven. We provide our own DSL to define infrastructure requirements. But we also implement the support of Cater and Spring, pretty popular web frameworks for Java and Kotlin. This means that with Kotless the user can apply a simple Gradle plugin to an existing Spring project, and Kotless will generate the required deployment. As for the Cloud API, Kotless provides two implementations right now: the serverless-based implementation for Amazon Web Services and the serverless-based implementation for Microsoft Azure. So with Kotless, your Spring or Cater application can be deployed in one of two major clouds fully automatically in a matter of minutes. One of the biggest advantages of Kotless is that it is able to integrate into existing application. We can treat anything that actually expresses infrastructural requirements as development API. For example, we can treat the existing code, like Spring annotations or Cater functions, as development API. With that ability, in JetBrains, we've been able to automatically convert an online IDE for Kotlin into serverless application, which reduced price from $250 per month to $50 per month automatically. All we had to do was write single additional class and set up AWS credential, and Kotless automatically influences the infrastructure. You can read more about this in the case study in our paper. Kotless and the whole idea of infrastructure in code has attracted some attention in the Kotlin ecosystem. Kotless already has reached 875 stars on GitHub. It has been mentioned during the release of Kotlin 1.6 and is basically the first Kotlin serverless framework for Microsoft Azure. We hope that our approach will make cloud-native application a bit more simple for everyone. So, give Kotless a try, and thank you for your attention.